Hello again. Thank you very much for staying with us. Let's take you straight now to the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, where we're expecting the estranged wife of former Minister Malusi Gigaba to give a testimony there. Let's take you live there now.
It also became clear during the consultation that Advocate Marbeck had previously not been favoured with a proper handover report of the issues and concerns already raised with Advocate Pretorius. There had been a few consultations between our client and Advocate Pretorius previously, and significant progress had been made in preparing our client's evidence. This abrupt replacement of the evidence leader meant that our client had to go through the same process all over again. It is traumatic for our client to be forced to repeat the events of a testimony since her marriage is in a state of collapse and there are minor children involved. The Commission shows no consideration and empathy to her position when it changes its legal teams for its own undisclosed reasons. During the aforesaid consultation on the 8th of April 2021, our client pointed out to the evidence leaders that there were certain facts reflected in the affidavit that were not in her personal knowledge, which needed to be discussed with her and clarified. At the time of issuing of the summons, this had not been addressed. When these issues were raised with the evidence leading team, the tone of Advocate September was accusatory, suggesting that it was our client's fault that these errors were not picked up before the affidavit was signed. Given her state of anxiety about the evidence which is against her current husband and gives detail of her married life and children, of her marriage and children, it is grossly unfair for the Commission evidence leaders to seek to shift blame to our client. Instead, as previously suggested by Advocate Marbeck and agreed to by our client, these aspects could have been clarified in a supplementary affidavit. Serious security concerns pertaining to our client's safety had been brought to the attention of the Commission, and an undertaking was made that the Commission would look into this aspect. Our client had not heard from the Commission in this regard, nor has she been afforded any form of security or the courtesy of an explanation for the failure to do so. Our client's first affidavit was leaked to the media, and she brought her dissatisfaction with this to the attention of the Commission. This aspect exacerbated our client's security concerns. The Commission undertook that it would investigate the source of the leak and revert to our client. No update has to date been furnished by the Commission to our client around this issue. Our client also highlighted to the Commission her discomfort about the Commission sharing her affidavit with AJ Gupta without informing her or her legal team. It mentioned that AJ Gupta was implicated, but he has not been in the country since the Commission started, and there was no basis to share the affidavit with him. The Commission has been wrongly suggesting that our client volunteered to come to the Commission, when the correct version is that she was approached by the Commission's Mr. Sakile Masuku in December 2020. And she in turn agreed to assist the Commission in compliance with her civic duties and as a law-abiding citizen. The letter must be read together with our letter dated 13 April 2021. We trust that the above does set out the reasons for our client's non-appearance on the 13th of April and demonstrate that her position to do so was not in defiance of the Commission, but emanates from serious concerns which the Commission has failed to address. This is further demonstrated by our client's decision to attend physically today in order to explain her stance, which she would have done even in the absence of the unlawful summons. We do not believe that the hostile and heavy-handed attitude adopted by the evidence leaders have assisted the process. Our client has taken a risky decision to testify at her own expense and that of her children. She is now being portrayed as a villain who is in breach of the chairperson's directions, which is both wrong and unfortunate. We are available to discuss the way forward in the spirit of cooperation and civic duty. In the totality of the circumstances, our client is of the firm view that the conduct of the Commission towards her has been abusive, discriminatory, and disrespectful, and no regard has been given to her rights and the traumatic experiences she has had to endure at the hands of other law enforcement agencies in the past 9 months. Instead, these experiences are being repeated for no justifiable reason. She has now been summoned without being given an opportunity to make submissions as to the necessity of the summons. We trust that the above is in order. If the chairperson deems it necessary, The above issues will be elaborated upon in an open hearing. This is the letter was signed, yours faithfully, RMT attorneys. Chairperson, this is basically the letter that we are aware Chairperson has been in hearings the whole day today, and unfortunately, as a result, would have been unable to look at the contents of this letter. However, what we seek to do, Chairperson, is to persuade the Chairperson to consider this letter. And if necessary, allow Ms. Gigaba to have the opportunity to say, Chairperson, I am here because I respect without fail the process of this commission. She raises various concerns, Chairperson, which have been listed in paragraph 8. And all she does, Chairperson, is to say, I am humbly requesting that these issues that I raise be considered, and if this letter fails to persuade the Chairperson, then Ms. Kikaba is here, and she will be able to explain any other issue that the Chairperson wishes explained. However, if there's anything else that the Chairperson would like me to address before we proceed, Chairperson, I'll be happy to do so.
No, that's fine. But is the position that she is here on the basis that she, although she has concerns, she is happy to assist the commission, or is the position that she has concerns, she's only here because she's compelled through the summons, otherwise she would not like to be here?
Chairperson, I will steal your words. Actually, I think you've summed it quite well.
I want to know.
Actually, I think you've summed it quite
because
well.
Because Mr. Solomon was interpreting the letter in a certain way, that is the attorney's letter, and I had received a certain impression of it which was different from what he was saying. So I want to hear from you exactly what her position is.
Chairperson, maybe I should start from the onset by saying, first of all, Ms. Gigaba feels it is of paramount importance that if she can assist the Commission in any way, she will be happy to do so. The only grave concerns that she has, Chairperson, is that the affidavit before you does not demonstrate. First, it contains information certain information that is not within her knowledge, certain information that she has disputed, and certain information that she does not agree with. And she says, Chairperson, that unless that is brought clearly and explicitly to the Commission, so that the chair is aware, amongst others, that, for instance, Ms. Kikaba is not happy with paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 1, 2, 3 reasons. And she says, unless that is made clear to the Commission, then the Chairperson and the Republic will be under the understanding that what is contained in that affidavit is what Ms. Kikaba is saying. Hence, she's saying, Chairperson, through you, I am happy to file an affidavit to identify for the Chairperson all the aspects that I say do not reflect that which I would want to communicate to the Chairperson.
Yes.
I do also need to emphasize that she does act, Chairperson, that indeed she's not a compellable witness. She says so. And she says, Chairperson, she believes that she enjoys the privilege, the long discussion that was had earlier, Chairperson. Not only the privilege that falls under marital privilege, Chairperson, but further, the privilege against self-incrimination. And Chairperson, what is critical?
Well, the one of self-incrimination is
indeed
is separate. So
indeed, Chairperson.
So that stands on a different footing. Yeah. Okay. Continue.
Indeed, Chairperson. Absolutely, I agree. So, Chairperson, what she's simply saying is, it is important for her to demonstrate to the chair that she will not disrespect the direction of this commission. She expresses her reluctance in this letter, not only of the basis that she feels she's an uncompellable witness, but she raises a plethora of issues that she feels have caused her even further discomfort with participating further in the commission. Now, Chairperson,
it's like you are confusing me even more. Because when you started, I thought you said she is saying she is happy to assist the commission. She thinks it's an important job that it is doing, but she just has certain concerns, and particularly she's concerned that in her affidavit there may be certain, or there are certain parts which are not within her personal knowledge, and she would like, or she would have liked, to have done a supplementary affidavit which would have identified those. Now, that's not a problem. That's somebody who says, I want to assist, but there is a problem with some of the some parts of the affidavit. But then when you went on...
Chairperson, I was going to point to.
Is it the instructions that are difficult?
I'm sorry, Chairperson. Maybe I'm probably tripping over myself in the process. I do apologize.
Yeah.
But that is the first part, to say I'm unhappy with aspects of my affidavit for the reasons I've already advanced. Then she goes further. She says, I come here with absolute respect for the commission and a civic duty that I take very seriously. And she says, that being the case, I am married to Mr. Gigaba still. She says, I believe for that reason alone, I am not a compellable.
And therefore I would not like to be here if I have a choice.
If I have a choice, I would rather not be here.
Okay. I think that answers my question. She's not here by choice.
No, she's not here by choice.
She's here because of the summons.
Indeed, Chairperson.
Okay.
Not only the summons, but she raises that very issue, Chairperson, in the last paragraph of the letter, where she says, I am concerned with the fact that an impression has been created out there that I have volunteered to come to the commission, when in actual fact I was called by the commission on this particular date and so on and so forth.
Well, I seem to remember that she gave an interview to one of the television stations, and she said she would be prepared to give evidence before the commission if she was asked to. Is that not true?
Chairperson, to quote her specifically, and I hope I will quote it as verbatim as she said it. The response to the question of whether or not she would be willing to come to the commission was, if I am requested by the commission to come through, I will be happy to assist my husband in issues where he needs me to help him remember. I will not go further than that.
Okay, all right.
But that is the response that she gave specifically to that question.
Okay, all right. All right. Thank you. Let me say, as I said earlier on, it is the duty of the commission, when it becomes aware of anybody who might have knowledge of information, or knowledge or information about matters that fall within its terms of reference, to approach that person and seek evidence, seek a statement, seek an affidavit, and if it is satisfied that the person knows matters that are relevant and material to the commission, to ask that person to make themselves available. And if they are not prepared to make themselves available to testify, unless they are compelled, to compel them.
Indeed.
So you might just be talking on television or you give an interview to a newspaper, you say something. If the commission becomes aware that you may be having knowledge of matters that it is interested in, it will approach you.
Indeed,
And it would be a dereliction of duty if the commission would be aware of that and not approach you when it appears that you may have information that falls within the terms of reference.
Indeed, Chairperson, I
Yes.
agree totally.
Okay, all right.
As the
Thank you.
chairperson.
And then let me just mention this. All concerns that your client has about how the commission may have treated her, how investigators may have treated her, or the legal team, a request that she may have made, or whatever, there's no problem with her articulating them. I will hear Mr. Mybeck might be able to say something about them or some of them either now or at a later stage when they've had enough time to look at the contents of the letter. But we are interested in making sure that if anybody has concerns and they articulate them, we look at them. And where we think the concerns have got merit, we will say so. Where they can be addressed, we want them to be addressed.
Indeed so, Chairperson. In fact, that's the very reason why Ms. Kikaba actually said, I think it's important. I think to some extent, the chair is not aware of the concerns that I keep using. And if I do not let the chair into the picture of my concerns, then it means I would have not only been unfair to the commission, but at all times the chair would believe that everything is going perfectly well and that there's no reason why I am not presenting myself as I should.
Yeah, no, that's very important. I think earlier today I may have referred to Mr. Montana, who was giving evidence last week, former group CEO of PASA. He had his own concerns. He chose to come and made his requests very respectfully, articulated his concerns, and they are being looked into. Those that can still be addressed, attempts will be made to address them, and he was allowed to continue to give evidence. He's cooperating with the commission, and my own sense is that if anybody asks him, he would tell them that he is being heard fairly, but his concerns will be looked at, and the commission will go back to him and say, on this one we agree, on this one we don't agree, on this one this is the position, so that he knows what has been done about them.
Indeed, Chairperson, I think Ms. Gigaba is there for right.
Say same thing with me, Ms. Ngoma, Ms. Gigaba, and I think she will tell me just now which one she prefers we must use. If she has any concerns, we'll look at them, and some we might not be able to address.
Indeed.
But those that we can address, we'll try and address. And where the commission or the legal team or investigators might not have gone back to her, they'll try and go back to her on those.
Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. But maybe one thing that I can say about the change of the evidence leader, because I did hear that she expressed a concern about that. I must say that I'm responsible for that. So it's not Mr. Mybeck's fault. And it's not for any reason other than simply that Mr. Pretorius is busy with certain matters, Mr. Mybeck was busy with certain matters at a certain time, and I said, like, in these circumstances, let Mr. Mybeck deal with the matter, and so it's nothing. But I understand that sometimes a particular person might find that maybe they deal better with a particular person, or maybe that's not the issue. It's just that she had to now start afresh with somebody and tell the same story. So, but that decision came from me, and it was simply a way of trying to see how best to use our resources.
Indeed, Chairperson. Okay. And I think she definitely understands that.
Yes,
in all honesty, the schedule of the Commission has been quite hectic lately, and I don't think anybody's not aware of that fact.
Yes. It happens quite frequently. Actually, even today, I just made another change in another work stream and said, okay, this one will deal with that, this one will deal with that. So it happens quite frequently. Okay,
thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Maibek, would you like to
Chairperson, subject to your direction, I would prefer to lead Ms. Ghigabe in evidence. Yes. I certainly do intend to respond to this, but I wouldn't like that to interfere with the presentation of her evidence. As you've mentioned, there might be things here that we need to investigate and look at a little bit more carefully.
No, that's fine. Good evening, Ms. Ngoma, and you must tell us how you wish to be addressed. Is it Ms. Ngoma or Ms. Kikaba, or either is fine? Which one do you prefer? Either is fine. Okay, all right. Okay, you have been listening to the discussion, is that all right? The one thing which I didn't mention to your counsel, and maybe she's listening, is the issue of a supplementary affidavit. I would imagine that she should be fine with a situation where, as she goes along with her affidavit, with her evidence, she can point out what she would have corrected in a supplementary affidavit. Is that fine? Just put on your mic. Switch it on.
Thank you, Chair. I probably need to indicate, Chair, that
if necessary, she can file it later on, but as she goes along, she says, no, this is not accurate or something. Would that be fine?
I would absolutely probably request that it may be helpful, Chair, that she files the supplementary affidavit first. And I say this, Chair, for numerous reasons. Because you will see, Chair, when we file the supplementary affidavit, that not only does Ms. Ngoma query the nature and the character of the evidence, in addition to that which I've already indicated below. But I think, rather, Chair, it would be helpful to the Commission to not have her go through the affidavit and correct it as she goes along. I think it would be more helpful to the Commission that she highlights those areas which is going to indicate clearly why she's highlighting and why she is objecting to those aspects. And I truly think that for purposes of the Commission, that may truly be a better approach.
Are you suggesting that oral evidence should be postponed until she has filed a supplementary affidavit?
Chair, we did make that suggestion to the evidence leaders.
Yes.
And I know indeed, I must say that it was very clear that, of course, it is up to the chair.
Yes, no, there is a problem with that.
Indeed.
But what your side could have done, or, well, I don't know how long ago you came into the matter, but
very recently,
her legal representatives could have prepared a supplementary affidavit even without involving the legal team to say, here are areas in her early affidavit that she wants to say A, B, C, D about, and this could have been made available to the Commission and the evidence leaders much earlier, or even if it was made available only today, we would have been able to see it before she starts her oral evidence. But postponing is problematic because we don't have the time.
Chair, and I do apologize for that. I do appreciate that. Unfortunately, Chair, and I'll speak for myself in this regard, I came into this matter on Wednesday last week.
Yes, yes.
And unfortunately, I had a family issue to attend to over the weekend, which I could not get out of under any circumstances. And so I did say that if it wasn't for that, we would have finalized the affidavit. In fact, we have started working on the affidavit already, Chair.
Yes, yes.
It is just that the client feels that that affidavit must not only be in the draft format that we have now, it must be specific enough to identify why she's unhappy with paragraph 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Yes.
But otherwise, what we had done was to globalize the issues so as to say, we are not happy with the affidavit because of the following.
Okay.
But her feeling is that, no, it must go specific to each paragraph as to why she disputes this and why she's not happy with it.
Yeah, okay, all right. No, we will continue with your evidence, Ms. Ngoma, and but in the end, if there are aspects or parts of your affidavit that you believe do not correctly reflect the position, you are free to indicate that. Okay. Mr. Mybeck?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Gigaba, the practice in the Commission is that I'm going to take you to your affidavit and take you to the last page where it was signed.
I apologize, Anthony. I apologize, Chairperson.
Yes.
I'm getting a note here from my attorney that says it will be critical to highlight, and I apologize for missing this point, that Ms. Gigaba feels that the affidavit which she's been sought to be let on does not represent issues that she says. So far as to say, and I know that it's not going to be a step-by-step, paragraph-by-paragraph evidence, but it ought to be placed on record that she effectively says that the majority of that affidavit does not represent that which she says. And even though the chair says it's okay, she must be let on that affidavit, it should be brought to the attention of the Commission that it is primarily what she feels is not her evidence. As the chair.
Okay, no, that's fine. As we go along, she must feel free to indicate what she believes does not reflect the position, and she would have to say whether that's what she said, what's written, but on reflection she doesn't think it's true, or whether she didn't say it at all. But by the time she finishes, when Mr. Mybeck has finished, if she feels that there are parts which were not touched upon, which she wants to deal with and say they don't reflect what the position is, she will be allowed to say that. Okay. Mr. Mybeck.
Thank you. Chairperson, Ms. Gigabe's affidavits are Exhibit BB 26. There are 2 of them. Ms. Ghigabe, could I take you, please, to page 999? When we refer to pages, they're the black numbers on the left-hand side, and we refer just to the last digits.
It's Transnet Panel 7, Mr. Mybeck.
I understand so, Chairperson, yes.
And what page?
999. Are you there, Ms. Kikaba?
Yes.
Now, there's an affidavit. It starts at page 999. Perhaps I could ask you to go through My learned colleague reminds me, Chairperson, that Ms. Gigaba hasn't yet been sworn in.
Oh, yes.
As a witness.
Actually,
I do apologize.
No, thank you for that. Please administer the oath of affirmation. Thank you.
Please state your full names for the record. Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath binding on your conscience? Do you solemnly swear that all the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God." Thank you.
Sorry, you might have been speaking too softly, Ms. Kikaba. They might not have heard. Is that the concern?
Yes, I'm told that the
Yes.
transcribers didn't pick that up.
Yes, please raise your voice so it will be recorded. Okay, please start afresh.
Please state your full names for the record.
I'm Noma Gigaba.
Do you have any objections to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear that all the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Was it audible? Huh? It is fine. Oh, okay, all right. Thank you. Mr. Maybeck.
Yes, thank you. So at 999, if I can ask you then to turn to page 1016, you'll see that's the end of the affidavit. (1016) is the signature page, Ms. Ghigabe, and then are you there at 1016?
Yes.
And then attached to that affidavit are 4 annexures, A, B, C, and D, pictures of the bag. See that?
Yes.
If I could ask you to go to page 1016. Do I understand that you attested to this affidavit at Santon on the 6th of March 2021?
Yes.
And will you confirm the truth and accuracy of this affidavit, subject to any corrections that you will make during the course of your testimony?
Can you please repeat that?
Would you confirm the truth and accuracy of this affidavit, subject to any corrections that you may make during the course of your evidence this evening?
Yes.
Maybe let's you might have formulated the question in a legal way.
Certainly.
Except for saying that in the course of your evidence, you will point out those parts of this affidavit that you think are not the truth or do not reflect the position. Except for saying that, are you happy to say those parts, other parts of the affidavit will be true and correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Mr. Maybeck.
Chairperson, might I then ask that you admit Ms. Gigabe's affidavit dated the 6th of March, commencing at page bundle 7, 999, as Exhibit BB 26.1.
The affidavit of Ms. Noma Gigaba, formerly Ngoma, which starts at page 999, is admitted as an exhibit and will be marked as Exhibit BB 26.1.
Thank you. Ms. Ghigabe, you will see that you then deposed to another affidavit. It's a short one dealing with the threats You'll find that at page 1021. And attached to that affidavit is one annexure marked NS1. Do you see that?
Yes.
Could I ask you please to go to page 1023? And would you confirm that you attested to this affidavit at Santon also on the 6th of March 2021?
Yes.
And would you similarly then, subject to any corrections that you may make during the course of your evidence, confirm the truth and accuracy of this affidavit?
Can you please rephrase that?
Let's say, are you confirming the correctness of this affidavit on the same basis as you did a few minutes ago, the other one? Namely, there may be parts that you will point out during your evidence as being inaccurate or not correct, but those that the rest will be true and correct.
On this part, everything is correct. Yes.
Oh, on this one, everything is correct.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So, Chairperson, if I could ask you to admit then Ms. Gigabe's affidavit dated the 6th of March, commencing at bundle 7, page 1021, as exhibit BB 26.2.
Yeah, the affidavit of Ms. Noma Gigaba, Ngoma, which starts at page 1021, is admitted as an exhibit and will be marked as exhibit BB 26.2.
All right. Ms. Ghigabe, if I could ask you then to go back to your first affidavit at page 999. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right. Perhaps I could just start out by asking you, are you in a position to confirm that you were at all times when this affidavit was being prepared represented by senior counsel?
Yes.
And in fact, he procured your signature of this affidavit. Is that correct?
Yes, but I have concerns on that.
I beg your pardon?
Yes, but I have concerns on that.
All right. We'll come to that.
Okay.
So, Ms. Kikaba, I wonder if I could just point this out to you. I'm going to ask you the questions because you speak quite faintly and you're more than entitled to do that. But I'm going to ask you the questions. You need to direct your answers at the chairperson. So you don't feel you have to look at me when you're speaking. You must speak to the chairperson. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So let's start at paragraph 1. It says that you're an adult female businessman, a business person, and you reside in Pretoria. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when did you marry Mr. Gigaba?
30 August 2014.
And are you still married?
Yes, we are still married.
In paragraph 4, it says that on the 21st and 22nd of January, the Commission interviewed you. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct.
How did you come to be interviewed by the Commission?
Sakile called me and he told me that the Commission wants to interview me.
That's Sakile Masuku.
Yes.
And was that after your ENCA interview?
Yes, I received a call the day after the interview.
Is it correct that you stated during the ENCA interview that you were prepared to assist the Commission?
I said, if the Commission calls me, I will come and assist the Commission where Malusi doesn't remember. So according to me, I wanted Malusi to come and give his evidence, and then where he doesn't remember or he doesn't record anything, then I will say what I know.
All right. You say at paragraph 5, at page 1000, that you are assisted by your counsel. We know that your senior counsel, Timbeka and Katobi, withdrew as your counsel and has now been replaced. But have your attorneys throughout been RMT attorneys?
Yes.
Did they also assist you in the preparation of this affidavit?
My attorney was never attended any of this when we were preparing for the evidence. He only attended once, the last one, when you were telling me that I need to come on the commission. It was the first day I also saw you, and it was her first day as well. So during the entire preparation of the evidence, she never attended. I was only there with the advocate, Tembega Ngubaito.
Okay. So he attended without the attorney?
Yes.
And you're quite right. On the 8th of April, when we met, your attorney came along?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then there's a heading saying the government positions held by Malusi over the period from 2009 to 2018. And then they are listed. It says at paragraph 6, Mr. Gigabro held positions tabled below over the years 2004 to 2018. Do you confirm that he held those positions?
That's the first information that I didn't put. All this information was collected by the commission, and I raised that with them because I never paid attention which department is working on, what it does it do, which year, so I never pay attention on that. So the commission put that. It's not me.
So presumably...
But does it accord with your knowledge, or you don't know whether it is true that he held these positions during these times?
I know that he held those positions, but I'm not sure about the times.
About the dates?
Yes,
Okay,
the years.
Right. Okay. Mr. Myberg?
So just to go through this, you knew that at a certain point, Mr. Gigaba was the Deputy Minister of the Department of Home Affairs. I think you go on to say in your affidavit that when you met him, he occupied that position, isn't that so?
It's correct.
Okay. And can you remember approximately when that was? In what years?
It was in 2009 to 2010 when we met, because we met in 2009.
Okay, and at that point he was the Deputy Minister of the Department of Home Affairs?
Yes.
Okay. And then, can you recall when he became the Minister of the Department of Public Enterprises, DPE? Did he hold that position at a time?
Yes, the time we were already together, it was in 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
And then, after that, he became the Minister of the Department of Home Affairs, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you recall when that was?
Not exactly, because I never pay attention to the dates and everything, and I raised that during our consultation.
Yes. All right, and then what was his final...
So, I'm sorry, Mr. Myberg. So, is the position that one of the things you would have corrected in terms of this paragraph is to say, let's not put the dates because I'm not sure about the dates?
Yes, I said
those
that.
Those positions, I know about those positions.
I know the positions.
Yes. Okay.
But I don't know anything about the dates,
okay.
And I don't want to be held accountable for the dates in case Malusi come and say at the date I was not because I'm not sure about that.
No, that's fine. That's fair enough.
And do you recall then that the final ministerial position that he held?
Say that again?
What was his last position as a minister?
He was the Minister of Finance.
And if you have a look at paragraph 7, did Mr. Gigaba ever say anything to you about being involved in ANC elections?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
I know at some point, I'm not sure which year it was, then he said to me he was the head of elections.
Then you go on to deal with your relationship with Mr. Gigaba and the Gigaba family. When did you meet Mr. Gigaba for the first time?
I don't remember meeting him for the first time.
Or when did you meet him?
I don't remember exactly, but I know that it was in 2009.
Yeah, well, I was actually getting at the year. I You don't need to be more specific with the day and month.
Okay.
All right. So you say, I met Mr. Ghigabe during 2009, and you've already told the chairperson that at that time, when you met him, he was the Deputy Minister of the Department of Home Affairs. Is that correct?
Yes, it's correct.
And was there a time when you moved in with him into his Pretoria home?
Yes.
Can you remember when that was?
I think it was in 2010.
And were you expecting a child at that point?
Yes.
Now, did Mr. Gigaba provide you with any financial means when you moved in with him?
Yes, he did.
Can you explain that?
He gave me his card that he said I must use for if I want to go to the doctor or if I buy anything in the house.
All right. And when were you then subsequently married? You've already told us that was on the 30th of August 2014, correct?
Yes.
Whereabouts is Mr. Gigaba's family home situated?
In Mandeni, KZN.
Mr. Gigaba, how many sisters does he have?
He has 2 sisters.
One of them, Gugu Gigaba.
Yes.
And do you know where she's employed?
Yes.
Whereabouts?
Transnet in Joburg.
And Mr. Gigaba's other sister, what is her name?
It's Nozipo.
And do you know where she worked?
Last time I know, she worked for Sahara. I'm not sure about the name properly, but it was the company for the Guptas, the one in Midrand. But it's the Sahara one.
Sahara Computers?
Yes.
Sahara Computers?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. And was there a time where she lived together with you and Mr. Gigaba?
Yes.
All right. Now, the next heading deals with meeting the Guptas and visits to the Gupta residence. And you'll see that that's a part of the affidavit that goes on for that page and the next page, and page 1033 and 1044. Quite a lengthy section. So let's work our way through this. You refer in paragraph 12 to the fact that from the time that you met Mr. Gigaba when he was the Deputy Minister of the Department of Home Affairs, he would visit certain persons. Is that correct?
Yes.
And who did he refer to those persons as?
That time, he said advisors.
You referred to them as?
Advisors.
Advisors. And did he explain to you what he was doing in meeting with these advisors?
So there were times I'll be confused when he talks about advisors, because sometimes he'll be with Tamem Somi, because he introduced Tammy to me as a friend and an advisor. But then later stage, he will say, I'm going to see an advisor, and then I already saw Tam, then I will ask, who are the advisors? Then he will differentiate them.
So at this point in time, did you know who his advisors were?
Not exactly.
And if I understand your evidence, did you make a presumption, did you presume that he was talking about Tami Masomi?
Yes.
And who was he?
I think at the time, Tami was his chief of staff at Home Affairs.
You then go on to say, you talk about something having happened 2 or 3 months before Mr. Gigaba took up the position of Minister of DPE. Can you remember what happened?
Can you please rephrase that?
At paragraph 13, you deal with something that occurred 2 or 3 months before he took up the position as the Minister of DPE.
Yes. I don't remember. He told me that you will move to the Department of DPE, and I asked him what is DPE because I didn't know what is DPE at that time.
Did he tell you where he had received this, or from whom he had received this news that he was going to move to being the minister of the DPE?
Then he said he heard it from AJ.
AJ who?
AJ Gupta.
Was that before he moved to the Department of Public Enterprises?
Yes.
When he told you that?
Yes.
Do you know how long before he actually moved, or can you not?
I think it was
remember?
2 to 3 months before he moved.
Okay.
And at that point in time, had you met Mr. AJ Gupta?
Not yet.
Then perhaps you could tell us how often did Mr. Gigaba visit his so-called advisors once he became the minister of the DPE? Can you remember?
I don't remember exactly how many times, but what I know, when he was at DPE, he will go more often.
Can you remember how he felt about this news that he had been told, namely that he was going to move to DPE? Can you remember how he felt about it?
He was excited about it. That's why I even asked, what is DPE?
Oh.
So then he explained to me, what is it?
Okay, all right. Okay, Mr. Maibek.
Thank you, Chairperson. So you say when he became the minister of the DPE, he went there to meet his advisors more often. Is that what you said?
Yes.
And was there a time when you asked him about who are these advisors?
Yes.
What was his response?
Then he told me that his unofficial advisors, people who are advising him about certain decisions about his work, then he differentiates them from the advisor that he had at DPE, which I know of them, which is his legal advisor and Tamim Som as well.
So did he tell you who these unofficial advisors were?
Yes, he told me.
What did he say?
It was the Guptas, AJ and his brothers, which I don't know all of them by names, because I'm only familiar with AJ more than the other ones.
Did he tell you what they advised him about?
He said they were advising him about work, about things that they were supposed to do.
Did the frequency of Mr. Gigabe's visits to the Guptas ever cause you concern?
Yes.
And happiness? Could you explain that?
Because I was not comfortable with that, because we have a little child at home. So, which I don't want to talk more about that. I don't want to involve my kids on this.
Sure. All right. And when you raised that concern with him, what was his response?
Then he said he will introduce me to them so that I can be comfortable with them.
And did he tell you why he needed to meet these advisors?
The reason he said he needs to, so that I can understand when he's with them, who are they?
I see. Now, in paragraph 16, you deal with Mr. Gigabe's visits to his advisors when Parliament was sitting and then when Parliament was in recess. Perhaps you could just take the chairperson through that.
Can you
So
please repeat your question?
when Parliament was sitting, when would Mr. Ghigabe go to Cape Town in a typical week?
Most of the time he will go on Monday evenings, or he would leave on Tuesday mornings.
Monday evening or Tuesday morning?
Yes.
And when would he come back?
He will come back on Thursday evenings or Friday mornings.
And would he then, when Parliament was sitting, would he inform you as to when he was going to the Guptas?
Sometimes he will go before he flies to Cape Town, or sometimes he will go when he comes back from Cape Town.
So that would be either on the Monday morning or the Friday evening?
Yes.
And then when Parliament was in recess?
He will go anytime.
And how would these meetings come about?
What do you mean by that question? Can you please ask?
Yes, so how do you know that he went to the Guptas?
Oh, because he will tell me.
He would tell you?
Yes.
When did you first meet Mr. Gigabe's advisors?
You mean the Guptas?
Yes.
Oh, when our son was born.
Sorry?
When our first son was born.
And in what year was that?
It was in 2011.
2011.
Yes.
And how did that meeting come about? You deal with this at paragraph 17.1.
Because AJ wanted to meet our son. So he told me like a few times that he wants to meet our son.
And did you agree then to go to the Gupta's residence?
Not on the first time you told me, but eventually I agreed after a certain time.
But you then did go there?
Yes, I went there.
And who did you meet at the Gupta residence on this first visit?
AJ, his wife, his son, yeah.
And what happened during the course of that meeting?
It was not a meeting, it was a visit.
What happened during that visit?
They greeted me, my son spoke, but it was like any visit that you will have when you visit someone who welcome you. But it was not a formal meeting.
And did they give your son any gift of any sort?
Yes.
Can you remember what it was?
AJ gave my son a necklace, but Malusi took it, so he never had it. He never used it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of yourself, what you said. After part, I didn't hear what.
Okay, I'm saying AJ gave him a necklace, which Malusi took it. Then he kept it. So he never ever gave it to my son.
Oh, okay.
What was the necklace made of?
It was a gold necklace.
Now that's in 2011, so that was your first visit. What happened in 2012?
In terms of visiting or in terms of...
In terms of visiting the Saxonwold compound. Did you go there in 2012?
Yes, we did visit.
How often did you go to the Saxonwold residence in 2012?
Sometimes he will go with me. Sometimes he will go with his protectors.
I'm asking you yourself, how often did you go in 2012?
We would go often, but not every day or weekly. It will depend on him.
I see that in the affidavit, paragraph 17.2, you say on several occasions during 2012.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Mr. Mayberg?
Thank you. Now, your second son, when was he born?
2012.
Okay. Can you remember the month? I remember telling you that I noticed that your second son was born on Christmas Day,
Yes.
25th of December.
Yes.
Did you then have occasion to visit the Guptas again?
Not then, but we went after a few months he was born.
And why did you go to the Guptas after your second son was born?
They wanted to meet my second born.
They were too?
They wanted to meet my second born.
Okay.
Now, in 2013, did you attend the Gupta wedding?
Yes, I did.
You, in paragraphs 19 and 20, deal with the Waterkloof Air Force Base. Do you want to just deal with that?
Say the question again.
Did you go to the Waterkloof Air Force Base?
Yes, I did.
Did you go there before or after the wedding?
I only went before the wedding.
Was it the day before?
It was the day before.
Can you remember what day of the week that was?
I don't remember because I don't remember what day was the wedding, but it was a day before the wedding.
So how did it come about that you went to Waterkloof?
Malusi asked me to accompany him to go welcome the Gupta family at the Waterkloof Air Force.
And what did you do there?
What did I do?
Yes.
I went there with them. We waited for them. But I sat inside the airport with my son. So he went out to fetch them.
And then
Okay,
what?
I'm not sure. Just want to make sure that. So the two of you and your sons went to Waterkloof. Is that right?
Yes.
And the purpose of going there was to welcome the guests,
Yes.
the Guptas, the
Yes.
guests. Okay. And you brought your sons with you?
Not sons. We only took the older one.
The older one?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Continue, Mr. Maita.
Yes, thank you. And then on the day of the Gupta wedding, did you accompany Mr. Gigaba?
Yes, to the wedding.
And this paragraph then, and you've indicated to me during our consultation that there's an error, or we pointed it out to you, because it reflects paragraph 20 that we packed and were escorted to attend the Waterkloof to receive the Gupta aircraft. When we left Waterkloof, there were many blue light vehicles and metro police. That is a sentence that should either be deleted or should find its way into paragraph 19. Is that correct?
I prefer to repeat, as I repeated again when I was raising the concern about it. I prefer to say it in my own words because what I saw. Yes.
All right. But you
Say
only
it in
went
your own words.
Sorry?
Say it in your own words.
We only went once at the airport, at the Waterkloof Air Force. It was a day before in the evening when the Gupta aircraft landed.
Mm-hmm.
Then I stayed inside the airport in that room, and then Malusi went out to fetch them. Then after that, all the members were escorted to the cars, and then we were taken by our protectors to go to our car. So when we left the airport, we went home. And then I saw a lot of blue lights escorting the members of the Guptas when they were leaving at the airport. So we didn't go again because here, somewhere it mentions like we were there twice, which we were never there twice. It was a day before. Then on the day of the wedding, I was at work. And Malusi called me that we have to go to the wedding. And I was shocked why I can just attend a wedding like that because I wanted to do my hair, I needed to buy something, but he said, we need to go. Someone asked him to go to the wedding. And then I had to leave work, and then we went home, we packed, we went to the wedding.
Okay.
But it was not something was planned to go to the wedding, according to my knowledge.
Okay. Just 1 second, Mr. Mybeck.
Thank you. When you were at the...
I'm sorry, Mr. Mybeck.
Yes.
Just 1 second. Will the technicians please switch off this screen here? Because it's distracting me. Okay, all right. We can continue.
Thank you. Did you meet any of the Gupta family whilst you were at the wedding?
Yes, we...
Just switch on your mic, Ms. Kikaba.
Okay.
Sorry, you said, Ms. Gigaba?
I was saying, yes, we met, but it was a lot of them.
It was?
It was a lot of them,
All right.
but I was not familiar with them because most of them, they were coming from India.
You refer in this paragraph 20 to a Facebook photo. What happened there?
When we were at the wedding, so a lot of ladies were doing something called henna. It was like a design that they do it in the hand. And I asked to join to do it as well. And then later, because it was my first time doing it, I posted it on my Facebook. And then I think it was later at night, Malusi told me, because we were supposed to sleep there because they booked for us. So Malusi told me that we need to go home, we can't sleep. And because there were already something on the media that we attended the wedding, and then Malusi was complaining that that's why he didn't even want to attend the wedding, so we need to go home. So then after that, he said I need to delete. Someone called him. So I don't know who called him to tell me that I must delete the picture that I posted on the wedding of that henna design. So I went on my Facebook, I deleted it. So the following day I wanted to remove it, I didn't even know that it doesn't get removed. So I think it stayed there for the whole week, but I deleted it on Facebook.
All right. Now, after the Gupta wedding, did you continue to go to the Gupta residence in Saxonwold?
Yes, we did.
How often would you go there?
We will go maybe during the week or weekend. It will depend.
Then what you do at paragraph 22 is you explain the procedure that would be followed each time you attended the Gupta residence. Please explain that. Tell us about the procedure. How did it work practically?
So every time when you come in, there's security, which is our protectors. So they will tell their protectors, because there were a lot of protectors outside who will be there, and they will tell them that we're here, and they will open, and one of them will take us in the house, and then someone will come and call AJ, and then someone will come, maybe offer us some drinks or something. Then later AJ will come and talk to us. So mostly it was like that all the time.
So can I just ask you?
Just 1 second. The transcribers, can you hear the witness well? Okay, all right. Okay.
Ms. Ghigabe, do you
continue.
mind? I'm actually struggling to hear you. Can you speak a little bit louder? I can't see your
Try and speak up a bit.
Because you guys exhausted me, so I'm so tired.
All right. So you were saying that AJ would arrive. Just explain how that would work.
Say that again?
When you went to the Gupta residence, you gained access into the house or the residence. You mentioned that AJ would then arrive.
Yes.
Okay. And what would happen then?
Then he will greet us. If we are just there, only for a visit, so we'll sit with him, we talk. But if it's a meeting, he will come, brief Malusi about something, they will go in the meeting, then I will stay in the room, at the lounge.
And would you have your cell phone with you?
No, but sometimes I will go fetch my cell phone.
Okay. What happened with your cell phones when you went to the Gupta residence?
They always ask us to leave them at I think it's like a foyer, and then we will go leave them there. And then later, I will go take my phone when I'm bored, if I'm bored.
And who would you see when you went to the Gupta residence?
Say that again.
Who would you see? Would you see other people, people you knew when you went to the Gupta residence?
The only people I saw, it was AJ, his wife, his brother, his son, Tamim Somi, and Sabanga Matlangu. They are the only people that I saw.
So Mr. Msomi, you've told us about. Mr. Matlangu, who was he?
Say that again.
Who was Mr. Matlangu?
He was Malusi's legal advisor.
And where would these meetings be held between AJ and Mr. Gigaba?
They will be in the opposite room from the lounge.
Did you ever ask Mr. Gigaba why you had to turn in your cell phone?
Yes, I did.
And what did he say?
Because he said some of the information was confidential, so we had to leave our phones. But it was not something was strange for him, because most of the time when I call him, his phone will be answered, maybe when he's at work. His phone will be answered by his PA, or maybe when they're in the NEC, they will leave. For him, it was the nature, but for me, I didn't understand why must I leave my phone.
Now, you've mentioned to us that you saw Mr. AJ Gupta, Mr. Matlangu, and Mr. Msomi.
Yes.
There. Did you see anybody else attending meetings?
No. But I knew that they were inside, because you can hear the voices of people in the room. And when AJ will come and brief him, I know that there will be people. But I don't want to say who was it, because I've never seen them.
And when you went to the residence, did you sometimes find cars already parked there?
Yes, there were a lot of cars.
What sort of cars?
Cars similar to our cars, which is like state cars.
Okay. How did you know they were state cars?
Because of the blue lights at the front, and also the bodyguards, because most of them, they dress the same, and the car, they mostly similar. It's either I don't know how to explain the nature of the cars, but they're a bit similar, most of the cars.
Now, you've mentioned that when you went to the Gupta residence, AJ would meet with you, and he would hold discussions with Mr. Gigaba, and then they would go off to the meeting room. What sorts of things would be discussed in your presence between Mr. AJ Gupta and Mr. Gigaba before they went for a meeting?
It was not discussion, it was like briefs.
Right.
He was briefing him, not like discussion.
And what was AJ Gupta briefing Mr. Gigaba about? What was the sorts of things that he briefed him about?
So sometimes you will brief him about the SAA, or you will brief him about Transnet, or a certain meeting that they will talk about, so that he's aware before you go to the meeting.
And can you remember what was discussed or what was briefed in relation to Transnet?
Most of the time in Transnet, it will be the people that AJ feels like they need to be appointed, or need to leave, or need to, maybe they're restructuring. And maybe they will just argue a little bit about it, because Malusi has his own favorites of people, and AJ has his own favorites of people.
And what did you hear about SAA?
SAA, most of the time, they will, when he's with AJ, they will be talking about the board. So he will be asking him about the board, or maybe Kalawa, because there was a lot of discomfort between Malusi and the chairperson of SAA. So sometimes they will discuss that.
Which chairperson of SAA are you referring to?
At that time, Monwebisi Kalawa was the CEO, Then Tutumieni was the chairperson. And I think Malusi liked Monabis Kalawa and Tutu didn't like him. And they will have those arguments most of the time.
Okay. Thank you.
And during these briefing sessions, did you ever hear any mention made of Eskom?
Yes.
And what was said about Eskom?
There was a time Mr. Brian Dames was the CEO of Eskom. And what I remember, Malusi liked Brian Dames. And there was a certain time then the Guptas didn't like him, especially AJ. Let me not say Guptas because it was most of the time was AJ. And AJ didn't like him. So he will say, Brian Dames needs to resign. He was uncomfortable about certain things, but he will be talking to him, not to me. And then Malusi liked Brian Dames. I think even myself, I liked him.
All right. And then, was there ever a time where Mr. Gigaba held a discussion with you about Mr. Dames?
Yes.
What did he say?
He told me that the Guptas don't like him, and he doesn't understand why they don't like him. And I think they told him that there will be a new restructuring, someone else will move to Eskom, and then Brian Dames will leave. But I didn't know how the process is going to happen, which few months later it happened.
All right. These visits to the Gupta residence, how long would they last for usually?
Hour to 2 hours, but not more than that.
An hour to 2 hours?
Yes.
Then at page 1005,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mybeck. I just want to make sure that I understood this. Paragraph 26 of your affidavit.
Yes.
You say at some stage, Mr. Kikaba told me that Mr. Ajay Gupta wanted him to get rid of Mr. Brian Dames. Having met Mr. Dames, I asked Mr. Kikaba why, and he said that the Guptas do not like Mr. Dames because there are things that Mr. Dames was supposed to do but did not do.
Yes.
That's correct. Is
Yes.
it correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Mybeck.
thank you, Chairperson. Ms. Ghigabe, you then go on to deal with meetings held at our home. Whereabouts was that? Is that the ministerial home in Pretoria?
Yes.
And you start by dealing with meetings with the Guptas.
It was not a lot of meetings. I think AJ only came twice to our home.
He came to your home.
Sorry?
You say that AJ came to your home,
Yes.
right? How many times?
I only remember twice.
And whereabouts, what did he do there?
They had meetings, but it was the two of them in the meeting, so I was not a part of the meeting, but I saw him because I went to greet him.
And whereabouts, in what room were the meetings held?
So the way the house is structured, there's a upstairs, because when I said it was underground, they questioned me. So let me not say it was underground, it was a downstairs. So all of us, we stay upstairs, and when you go down with the steps, there's a room that is under, which Malusi used as his study or meeting room. Yeah, so AJ was there.
Right. And did Mr. Ghigabe tell you what he was meeting AJ Gupta about?
I think that time there was some project at Eskom. It was called Egusile Project. I think that project was giving Malusi a lot of sleepless nights. And then he said, no, AJ was here to give him, they were discussing Eskom, Egusile, but it didn't give me all the details about it.
So what Eskom project was giving Mr. Ghigabe sleepless nights?
I only remember Egusile project.
Sorry?
I only remember Egusile project.
Then you go on to deal with meetings with Mr. Gigaba's staff. Was there a time where his staff visited your home?
It was a ministerial staff. So there's a staff of the department and there's a ministerial staff. So ministerial staff, it's people that he travels with wherever he is, either he goes to Cape Town and he comes back. Then there's a department. But most of the time, if it's a ministerial staff, maybe one person will come from the department, maybe to brief them if we are traveling on the state. Maybe sometimes it will be the DG, or they will choose whoever is relevant to the trip. So he will come and brief the entire ministerial team.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mape, can I go back to paragraph 29? Did it ever happen that Mr. Kikaba told you that he and Mr. Gupta, Ajay Gupta, were discussing any projects at Transnet?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So they used to talk about maybe renewing contracts. Maybe AJ will ask Malusi, no, there's a project needs to be renewed, or maybe someone needs to sign in certain projects, but I don't know exactly who needs to sign it, but they will talk about it.
Okay. Mr. Mabe.
Thank you. Now, you go on at paragraph, or in 30 and 30.1, you deal with a trip to Mumbai and New Delhi. And what we identified during our consultation, you'll remember, is that there's an error. This is another area where there's an error in the affidavit. Because it says at 30.1, during the last period of Mr. Gigaba's tenure as Deputy Minister of Home Affairs. Now that would have been in late 2010. You go on to talk about a trip in 2010 to India. In what year did that trip actually occur?
I said to people who were leading, because you were not there, to people who were leading this part, I said to them, I don't want to say exactly which year because I don't have my passport with me. I remember there was a trip to India, but I don't remember exactly when was it. And then when the affidavit came, it was written this year. And I even mentioned to Sakile that I don't want to be accountable for the year exactly, but I remember we went to India, to Mumbai.
So we know from Mr. Gigaba's affidavit that he says it happened in 2015. Do you accept that now?
If he says so.
Okay.
Because I don't have my passport. Because on that day, we were talking about this, I said to the commission team, I will go check my passport at home. So what I've done on my way when I was leaving, where we had the meeting with the commission team, I called his former PA. Then I asked her about my passport, the state passport, because we don't keep those passports with us. And then, because I wanted to know exactly when did we go, then she said she's going to come back to me. By the time I arrived at home, because my passport was there before I left, because I wanted to remember certain trips because we were traveling a lot, because I had two separate passports. I have the normal passport, then we have the diplomat passport. So when I got home on that day, after calling his PA, my passport was not there, and my two kids' passport was stolen.
All right, so this is a part of your affidavit that I understand you would want to correct.
Yes.
In a supplementary affidavit, because it may very well be that the change of the date then has a knock-on effect, as these things often do. But presently, can you remember what happened in India? What was the purpose of this trip?
I don't remember exactly, but what I heard, what Malusi was talking about, they were talking about to meet some, the Gupta family members, some people who's gonna assist in working in the Mumbai trip, because there was an airline that they used to talk about when he was at DPE. So there were people need to come working their permits. So most of the time they will talk about the permits of some Gupta family. So I don't know how that was facilitated, because I remember when Malusi was saying it's not easy for him to go to India when it's not a state trip, because everyone will question. So then I don't know how it ended up, it was a state trip.
All right. And in India, who did you travel with? Who did Mr. Gigaba travel with?
With his staff.
Would that have included Mr. Masomi?
Yes.
And you say that they attended various meetings. I didn't see with whom they met, as I was out shopping when they attended the meetings. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you deal with the Johannesburg-Mumbai flight route. What happened there?
What I know about it, it's when he was still at DPE, they used to talk about the Mumbai route, that I think it was South African airline that they need to cancel, and another route from Mumbai need to take over. So they used to have a lot of discussion about that. That's the only thing I remember.
Just whilst we're on this issue of a supplementary affidavit, as I understand it, because it has been shared with me, Mr. Ghigabe, your counsel, actually prepared a draft supplementary affidavit, didn't he? After our consultation on the 8th of April, was it?
Okay.
And this was, you would have seen, was one of the paragraphs that's addressed in that.
Okay.
You confirm that?
Chairperson, if I may.
Okay.
I would like to, I have had this discussion earlier. We have concerns about affidavits that the clients say have to be specific to her. She must have read them, and she has made it clear that she will not give any evidence on drafts that she has not particularly commissioned. And therefore, I request that the issue on the draft affidavit not be led with.
Well, I think Mr. Mybeck is, all Mr. Mybeck is trying to do is to check whether this is one of the affidavits which are going to be the subject of corrections in a supplementary affidavit. Yes. Yes. So I think Mr. Mybeck wanted to be fair so that we know that we mustn't take this affidavit, this paragraph, as not subject to correction.
Chairperson, if I understood correctly, and maybe I did not, what Mr. Mybeck is suggesting to the witness is that there is a draft supplementary affidavit that he's in possession of, which he says corrects some of the issues that are being dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have indicated, even prior to the sitting with Mr. Mybeck, is that the draft affidavit, which he has been furnished with, is but a drop according to the witnesses. The witness has been clear. Nothing should be discussed in the commission until I have personally commissioned an affidavit. To do so would be premature, because whatever draft supplementary affidavit that is before him and not before this commission is not going to be discussed now.
Mr. Mybeck hasn't responded to you, but I have a very good sense that he wasn't saying that because he wants to hold the witness to whatever is in the draft affidavit. I don't think he wanted to I think that's what you may be concerned with.
Chairperson, maybe he can clarify it, because that is a concern for us.
I don't think Mr. Mybeck wants to say later on, I saw that affidavit, this is what it was saying, or anything like that. No, I don't think. Mr. Mybeck, talk for yourself.
No, absolutely, DCJ. I mean, the simple point, I'm not suggesting that the witness is bound by any affidavit, and of course she can say what she wants to. But the simple point is that during the consultation on the 8th of April, it was identified that there was a problem with this paragraph. I alerted Mr. Ghigabe to that, and as I understand it, he set about working on a draft affidavit.
Yes.
The reason that I highlight that is there's no point in me then taking this witness through every single line of all these paragraphs because they need to be amended.
There's a problem, yeah.
Yes.
Can I say something on that?
Yeah.
I think what my lawyer is trying to highlight, because if we corrected this, because I raised these issues before even Malusi was given my affidavit. And when Malusi had my affidavit, was given my affidavit, on their response on my affidavit, they went for those errors. And they gave him an upper hand, like it looks like I was lying.
Okay.
A certain nature didn't happen.
Okay.
But if the commission had listened while we were consulting, because I raised those issues, because I think some of the things when they wrote them, they didn't put it in my words. And now, when Malusi's lawyers and himself responded to them, now they are just questioning most of all those errors because they know it didn't happen like that, because in the trip happened, that the fact remains. But now the only part is the year or what happened. So now they're twisting the words because they know it's not exactly like that. But if we have addressed those issues before, we won't be faced by this. And also, I will be comfortable to answer this question. And hence, I said, I didn't come to give my evidence the time when I was supposed to come, because I didn't want to say things because they are written. And then one day, someone will hold me accountable. They said, I said this and I didn't say it. So, because I think the way it's written, things are twisted, and what they highlighted, all of them, which is the affidavit of Soma, I saw it, I saw Siyabonga Gama, I saw Malusi's. What they highlight more is the errors that are made, but it doesn't change the fact of the things, but it's how things are put. It's wrong.
No, that's fine. I think Mr. Maibek is saying, because he's aware that you did raise issues with this paragraph, and he thinks the supplementary affidavit that corrects this might affect certain other paragraphs that follow, he would rather not take you through them, because he's aware of that. That's what he wanted. He was trying to convey.
Okay.
Mr. Maibek.
Yes, thank you. Then, Ms. Ghigabe, at page 106, there's a heading, prior knowledge of appointments in state-owned enterprises. Now, you deal at paragraph 31.1 with a new age breakfast, and that Mr. Gigabro then informed you of something after one of those breakfasts. What did he tell you?
Can you please repeat the question?
Paragraph 31.1.
Yes.
You say after one of the new age breakfasts, Mr. Gigabro then told you something. What did he tell you?
About the TNA breakfast?
Yes.
The only thing I know, it's him and AJ, they used to discuss who sits on which table. That's what I know about them.
Okay. So the heading to this section is prior knowledge of appointments of state-owned enterprises. Was there a time when Mr. Gigabro would tell you, well, Mr. So-and-so is going to move here and then that would happen? That's what this section deals with.
Yes.
Were there occasions where he said X is going to happen and then it did happen?
Yes.
Can you remember those instances? Who was he talking about?
I remember when you say Brian Damis will leave at ESCOM, then Brian Malefe will go to ESCOM. So I knew that before it happened, and it happened.
Okay, so he said to you that Brian Malefe would go to ESCOM?
Yes.
And I think you've
I
mentioned
think
that
even Gama also, I knew before we even, I knew before they were even appointed.
so he told
Okay,
you.
maybe let's take one at a time so
Yes,
it's clear.
certainly.
Let's talk about Mr. Brian Molefe. You say that after one of the New Age breakfast sessions, Mr. Kikaba told you that Mr. Brian Molefe was going to be moved from Transnet to Eskom Holdings Stock Limited.
That deals with Mr. Molefe. Did Mr. Ghigabe ever mention anything to you about Mr. Gama?
So you were, when he was appointed as the CEO, he was not arriving as a new person.
He was not coming from outside.
Yes, because I remember that.
Yes, in I think June 2010, and he was reinstated in February, or the settlement agreement was in February 2011. He started or resumed duties in that position of CEO of TFR, namely a division of Transnet, I think in April 2011. And then later on, when Mr. Brian Molefe was seconded to Eskom in 2015, April, Mr. Kama was made acting group CEO of Transnet. And then I think later on he was appointed. So that's
yes,
what
I only remember that last part of him because I was not familiar
part.
with him 2011 and 2012.
Yes, okay. So you had that he was going to be appointed as Chief Executive Officer of
Yes.
Transnet in 2015,
Yes.
or you are not sure when it was?
Yeah, it was because during the time, Malusi was a
Was he still Minister?
he was
of-
a
at that
he was a
time, or-
DPE.
He was still Minister of Public Enterprises
Yes.
when he told you about Mr. Gama
Yes.
being in line to be appointed as CEO of Transnet.
Yes.
Okay, and you don't think you are mistaken about the fact that he was
I'm not
DPE
sure
at
exactly
the
about
time?
the year. Yes.
You are not sure whether he was still at DPE at that time. That is Mr. Kikaba, when he told you. Could it be that he was no longer Minister of DPE at the time?
He was.
He was.
Yes.
Okay. all right.
Because we went in Cape Town to attend some function. It was an ESCOM function.
Yeah.
But the Gama was not there, but Brian Medifo was there. So,
Okay.
and I remember Malusi was still the Minister of
Public Enterprises.
Yes.
Okay.
But
Mr.
it just,
Malusi.
I don't remember exactly about the years.
Okay.
And
no, that's fine.
I said that to the commission that I'm not
Yeah.
sure about the years because I was not keep on track of everything that he was doing.
No, that's fine.
See, Ms. Ghigabe, perhaps to be of some assistance to you, this is another issue that we looked at during our consultation. Because as the chairperson has pointed out to you, in 2011, Mr. Gama was reinstated as the chief executive of Transnet Freight Rail. And that was at a time when Mr. Gigabro was the DPE minister. He was then, in 2015, made the group chief executive of Transnet, by which time Mr. Gigabro was no longer the DPE minister. And as I recall, you talked about being put back into a position. Do you remember that?
Because what happened is, that's the reason I said I don't want to put times on certain issues. What I wanted to highlight is like every time when something will happen, he will say it before. So he will come and say it. And when I was giving my consultation, I said, I don't want to put exact times with what he was talking about. What I wanted to highlight is like each and all of them, when they were appointed, we knew before because he will tell me about it maybe 2 to 3 months before that so-and-so will go to this one or this one will move. Some, he'll be sad about it. Some, because there's nothing he can do. So it was those kind of topics. So I knew that Mr. Kama will be brought back to the position. It's just like I don't know when. But I knew also about Brian, that Brian will move to ESCOM before he was appointed to go.
Would you have made a distinction
Yes.
between being told that Mr. Gama was going to be made or appointed as CEO of TFR, which was a division of Transnet, or being told that he was going to be appointed as CEO of Transnet? In your mind, would you have been able to make that
I think
distinction?
maybe the mistake is there because I don't remember exactly what what position he was holding, but I know that at some point when Malusi was at DPE, Siabonga was in a position that he was appointed to. And because he said that at home.
Mr.
Then
Malusi.
I said, what I don't know, because I was not keeping in tracks of their movements.
Yeah.
Because I was not tracking this one is doing this and this. But I knew that at some point, because if I remember correctly, when Siabonga was appointed in that position, there was like little bits of a noise. I think it was in the media about him moving and he needed to come back. So, and then Siabonga, Mashangu and Malusi, they had some discussion at home talking about it, that Siabonga must come back.
Now, you have talked about Mr. Gama coming back or something like this, and
Yes.
appointment.
Because I don't know his position properly.
Yes.
Because I've never done that research.
Yes, you see, he was dismissed at the end of June 2010 from his position as CEO of TFR, not of Transnet.
That's
Then
what I don't know.
he was fighting his dismissal,
Yes.
and then there were negotiations for a settlement. The negotiations happened when Mr. Kikaba was
still
Minister
DP.
of Public Enterprises.
Yes, I remember that.
And as a result of those negotiations, a settlement agreement was reached, in terms of which he was allowed back. He
Yes.
was reinstated.
Yes,
But
that's
he
what
was
I'm
not-
talking about.
When he was reinstated, he was going back to his earlier position
Yes.
of CEO of TFR.
Yes, that's
He
what I was talking
not
about.
being made CEO of Transnet.
Yes, that's what
You
I was
talk
talking
about the first one.
Yes,
Oh, okay.
because that time I remember Malusi was at DPE.
Okay, all right. But did you say they held a meeting at your home, Mr. Kikaba, Mr. Mahlangu, and Mr. Gama at some stage?
No, Gama has never been at my home,
Oh.
but we were like, they were like friends of some sort, because
All
at
three
some
of
point
them?
we attended the wedding, I think his daughter's wedding, and also they were close.
The three of them?
Yeah, they were close.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember Malusi we'll have that kind of discussion with Siabonga, Mahlangu. They will discuss how they need to assist Siabonga Gama to come back, because there was some dismissal that happened. So I remember that, those discussions, just like I was not part of them, but I remember that.
But were those discussions, were they taking place in your presence, or you were hearing from Mr. Kikaba that such discussions had taken place?
It was him and Tammy Msom, they were talking.
Yes,
Yes, but Gama was not in the meeting.
not in a meeting.
Yes.
They were talking on the phone.
No, it was a meeting. It was Tammy Msomi and Malusi, they were talking about that.
Oh.
And then later, Malusi was telling me, because I think he didn't like how Siabonga Gama was dismissed, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Mr. Michael?
Thank you. At paragraph 31.3, you also say something about Mr. Gama.
Yes.
Can you deal with that, please?
Can you please say that again?
So, was there, how, do you know how Ghigabe came to be employed at Transnet?
I have a little knowledge about it. What I know is when Gugu told Malusi that at SAPI, they want him to take the package because he was very sick. And then Malusi was like, no, he must take the package and move to Joburg. He will talk to Siabonga to find him a position there. So then he came, he stayed with us, I think, for a few months. Then after that, he went to work at Transnet.
I'm sorry. Just repeat that answer. I missed some things.
Okay. So what I know, Gugu was working in KZN at SAPI, but just because she was often very sick at work, so SAPI offered her the boarding package. So Malusi said, no, she must take it and she must move to Joburg to stay with us. So which she came to stay with us. And he explained to me that her sister is coming to stay with us, but he will speak to Siabonga Gama to find him a job at Transnet. Then once he found the job, he will leave our home and find a place to stay. And that happened.
Okay. Mr. Maybeck?
Thank you. Then, Ms. Gigabro, there's a heading, tensions rising. You see that?
Yes.
Now, whilst Mr. Gigaba was the minister of the DPE, was there a time when you felt that the Guptas were putting pressure on him, or that he mentioned that to you?
He mentioned that to me.
And what did he say?
There were times where Malusi will have his own diary from his department. And then while he's sitting at home, maybe he will say, AJ is calling him, he needs to go, or he will have to leave the department. So he will come at home, he was like, no, let's go to Sexton, they want to see me. But it came to a time where he didn't want to do it. He says they put pressure on him because he has his own diary that he runs it with his PA. So now when they do these random calls, so now he needs to cancel certain meetings and then he had to rush to Sexton. So he was not happy with that. And also remember, he was really not happy with when there were a lot of arguments and pressure on Monwabisi Galawa to leave SAA because Malusi thought he was good as a CEO. And also, I remember that he liked Mr. Dameset as he said he was a good guy, he was working. So, but the Guptas didn't like them. So there were a lot of discussion about them. So sometimes he will not take their calls when they're calling, and I was like, no, why are you not taking their calls? He was like, they always put pressure on me. They want me to run my work the way they want, and now I want to run the department the way I want.
So was there a time where you discussed this with Mr. Gigaba? The pressure that you say was being put on him?
Yeah, a lot of times, because most of the calls, they will make him feel so uncomfortable. It's either when maybe he talks to Dumieni, maybe they're discussing SAA, and then after that he will talk to me because he was not okay, because I think it was more of he wanted me to give him support. And also, there are certain people that he really enjoyed to work with them. And then he felt Guptas, they also want to change things around, and he was comfortable with those people.
So was there ever a time in that context that you suggested to Mr. Gigaba that he might stop using these advisors?
Can you please repeat that?
Did you say in the middle of paragraph 32, when I asked Mr. Gigaba why he did not stop using the Guptas as his advisor, what did he tell you then?
Oh, I asked him that because I felt like, because these people are stressing you, so why don't you just cut communication with them? So he said he can't.
And what did he say in response?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Okay.
Was there a time, have a look at paragraph 33, when the relationship between Mr. Gigaba and the Guptas appeared to be strained?
Yes.
And when was that? Can you remember?
Firstly, I noticed every time when they will talk about Damis, Malusi didn't like those. And also, I remember when they were talking about Monwabisi Galawa, he really didn't like Monwabisi to be removed. And I remember that at the time it was more when they talk about, because his calls into Dumieni, in the beginning they used to be very friendly. Then later, when he was at DPE, they used to argue a lot about the board and the decisions of the board, and also how SAA is operating. So Malusi was very uncomfortable how, I think he felt like Dudu was just in everything. He wanted to be hands-on where he's not supposed to be hands-on. So it was more of that most of the time.
Now, did Mr. Gigaba often receive calls from Mr. AJ Gupta?
Yeah, sometimes AJ will call him. Sometimes he will take the call, sometimes he won't take his calls.
And why? What would cause him not to take the calls?
I think it was in the later stage where he will avoid his calls because he knew that he will tell him something that is going to upset him, or he will tell him something about a certain individual that need to be moved. Because every time when there's someone AJ wants him to be appointed, he will just put pressure on him, and Malusi would hate that. So, and at some point, sometimes he will, then he will ignore his calls.
And what would happen if he ignored the Gupta's calls?
I only remember one instance where AJ said, Malusi must remember why he was appointed as a Minister of PBE.
What did Mr. AJ Gupta say?
He said he needed to remember why he was appointed as a Minister of PPE.
As a Minister of Public Enterprises. Did you say this in your presence, or did you hear from Mr. Kikaba that is what?
Malusi told me.
He told you?
Yes, but I was there when he was talking to him on the phone, but also he told me.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mike?
Yes, thank you. I just want to take you through paragraph 33 and tell me if there's parts of it that are wrong. It says, during early 2014, Mr. Gigabe's relationship with the Guptas began to appear strained. The Guptas wanted Mr. Ghigabe to get rid of Mr. Damas as the Chief Executive Officer of Eskom because Mr. Damas was not doing what the Guptas wanted him to do for them at Eskom. However, Mr. Ghigabe did not agree with the Gupta's instruction. Mr. Ghigabe then started avoiding telephone calls from the Guptas. When Mr. Ghigabe ignored the phone calls, the Guptas would send Mr. Masami to speak to him, and Mr. Ghigabe would then agree to meet with them. Mr. AJ Gupta would regularly call Mr. Ghigabe and demand that he attend the Gupta residence to meet certain people. This upset Mr. Ghigabe because he would have to cancel his planned official appointments in order to do so. Mr. Ghigabe also told me that AJ Gupta told him that if he wanted to run the DPE as he wished, he would be moved back to the Department of Home Affairs. I understand that Mr. AJ Gupta would often tell Mr. Ghigabe that he should remember why he was appointed at the DPE.
Yes.
Is that correct, or is there something wrong with this paragraph? Is there anything wrong with it?
There's nothing wrong.
All right. Then you go on to deal with Mr. Gigabe's relationship with Dudu Mnyeni. Now, was there a time where Mr. Ghigabe had a close working relationship with Ms. Mnyeni?
Yes.
When was that?
I think when he was appointed in the beginning at DPE, they were close. They were like a sister and a brother, although they were colleagues as well.
Paragraph 34 goes on to read that Ms. Mnyeni facilitated our honeymoon trip to Mauritius. What do you mean by that?
So, let me say pre-honeymoon, because it was not the exact honeymoon, and I raised that on the consultation.
Yes. So this was a trip to Mauritius, if I understand correctly what you're saying?
Yes.
That you took shortly before you got married?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say Ms. Mnyeni facilitated the trip, what do you mean by that?
So he arranged the whole trip for us. Then he booked for us to go to Mauritius. We went to meet her at the Sheraton Hotel. Then she sent us the whole itinerary about traveling. And I remember when we were in Mauritius, we were stuck because I think Malusi was not so familiar with traveling by himself. So when we were there, we didn't know where to pick up the car, what happened. So we were calling her when we were there because she's the one who arranged the trip. So he did the trip because he said he wanted him to go to rest. Because while we were arranging my wedding, Malusi was not part of the wedding arrangements because he was working. And if I remember properly, that time Malusi was head of elections, so he was forever out with the door-to-door doing the whole preparations of the elections, and also it was the time we were preparing for our wedding.
So, who paid for this trip to Mauritius?
Did you pay for it? Malusi told me that he paid for it. But what I remember, she's the one who gave us the whole itinerary, our flights, and when we get there, where we must sleep, who must we call, who need to pick us up at the airport, and everything.
Now, can you remember where Mr. Gigaba would typically meet with Ms. Mnyeni?
At Sheraton Hotel in Pretoria. But sometimes she would come at home.
Sorry?
Because sometimes she would come at our home.
She'd come to your home?
Yeah.
And was there a time then where their relationship soured?
Yes.
How did that come about, or why?
They used to, it started, because they started as, they have a sisterly and a brotherly relationship, and also as colleagues. But then it became sour when you used to tell Malusi that you need to do a certain thing. And Malusi will be like, he doesn't want to tell her the kind of job that he needs to do. And also, I remember on the Monwabisi and Kalawa saga, Dudu didn't like Monwabisi and Malusi did. And also Malusi was not happy when Dudu was interfering with the board decision things. So he would call her and say like, why she's always involved in things. And I remember they will have like a lot of arguments. Then Dudu will be like, Malusi will go back he will be taken back to Home Affairs. And Malusi is like, no one will take me back to Home. So they will just fight about that. And Malusi, or sometimes he will come and say, the president said you need to do this. And then Malusi was like, President, if you want to tell me something, he will come to me. He mustn't go to you and tell me something to do. So they had that kind of a relationship where it became, they didn't want to meet, because I remember there was a certain time where Malusi didn't want to talk to her anymore, but it was more of how she runs SAA. Malusi felt like he was not supposed to be appointed as a chairperson of SAA. He felt like he didn't know how to do the job. Sometimes he interferes. So they had that kind of a strained relationship. But in the beginning, they were very close.
You say at paragraph 37, well, let me ask you, did Mr. Ghigabe ever mention anything to you about the SAA Johannesburg Mumbai flight route?
Yes.
Was that an issue that was causing concern?
It was their topic, because I think Malusi was not interested in this thing of Mumbai route, SAA to be cancelled, but it was Dudu's thing, and then he will say they will discuss it with Malusi, and every time when they talk about that, Malusi will be very angry, like why she's telling her what to do, why she's interfering, because sometimes he will just switch off the phone and he will tell me like, I don't know why she was just appointed. So every time Malusi used to question why he was holding a position of being a chairperson, because he felt like he was just interfering everywhere.
Chairperson, I have a request that we take a short comfort break. I see that it is just gone 9 o'clock.
Well, you have been standing the whole day.
Yes.
How are you feeling?
No, I'm fine.
You are fine.
I'm keen, I'm sure like everyone, to finish this evidence.
Ms. Kikaba, can we continue after a break and try and finish?
Okay.
Okay, all right. We'll take a 10 minutes adjournment. We adjourn.